What's going on, guys? It's Bromley from Empire Barbell, and today we're going to talk about the difference between geared and natty programs. I get this question a lot. Real quick, go ahead and click the like and subscribe button, click the notification bell. We're putting out a few videos a week, and I want to make sure that you guys don't get left behind. You want to see these as they come out so you're not left playing catch up. So go ahead and click that bell. So when we're talking about the differences between programs for people who are enhanced versus those who are natty, this is a question I get a lot, and I think it's because a lot of people have kind of a misrepresentation of the gear and what it does. So I'm very open about my experience with it. I never try to misrepresent myself as something I'm not. I don't want this channel to be specifically about that, so I don't talk about it as much. But on topics like this, I'm happy to talk about my experience. So I'm 33. I started training when I was 13. The first 15 years were completely drug-free. Last 5 years, I made a decision to go to the dark side, so to speak, and a lot of the growth I've had has been in the context of that change. It's a personal decision. Everybody has to make it. I'm not advocating for or against. I got real with where I was and how long I had left and what I wanted to do in that time, so I made a decision. Now, I have a pretty unique perspective, I think, because I was natty for so long. I was 27, 28. So that was, again, 15 years of solid training. My early 20s, I had been deadlifting in the mid 600 pound range. I had push jerk 365 for a double, and this was as a middleweight. I was competing as a middleweight strongman at the time. So I have a pretty good hand. Again, I don't consider myself a genetic specimen really at all. I think I have more shortcomings than advantages, but that's where being stubborn and being dedicated and being kind of intelligent about what you're doing can really make up a lot of ground as far as that's concerned. So I use myself as a pretty good case study, and all of the people I know, because on the one hand, I have my own background as a natty lifter. I have all the natty lifters I handle, which are a lot of them, a lot of the newbies that come in. We focus on getting strong without enhancements. And then on the other hand, I know a lot of guys. I've talked to World's Strongest Man finalists. I've talked to IPL world record holders. So I have a pretty good example of who's doing what across the board and how they might train differently, what they might get away with. So when it comes to you, the trainee who thinks that you have some special asterisk next to your name based on what you should or shouldn't do or whose advice you should take, that's a complicated question. My main response to this when people ask about the differences in training methodologies is it doesn't matter, don't worry about it. And the main reason I say that is because everybody has a lot of individual variations outside of just whether you're on PEDs or not. All training is setting a baseline of work that is sustainable and finding a way of exposing yourself to more and more stress over time in the context of that baseline that you set up. And then one step further, over a longer period of time, you're going to be ebbing and flowing back between different training thresholds, and that is basically periodization in a nutshell. What we're talking about in terms of programming is going to be what baseline is sustainable for you and what rate of progression is sustainable. And that varies wildly on an individual basis. And the way that it changes once you incorporate PEDs is not universal in the slightest. A great example of that is the basic durability of a lifter. This is something that I've struggled with. And that's the fact that when you jump on PEDs, when you jump on gear, the increase in strength, the increase in force production that you see that's pretty quick often exceeds your body's ability to handle it. In extreme cases, we see muscles rip, we see tendons pull off the bone. When you think of lifting federations where you tend to see a lot more drug saturation, you tend to see a lot more of these injuries that are very, very aggressive. Just recently, I think some squatter just had his quad tendons rip off the bone. That's not something you see in drug-tested meets. Even in Olympic lifting, as dirty as Olympic lifting has got over the years, you've never seen somebody just shred their tendons off the bone. You see this when guys are on a bunch of stuff, when their progress is being driven by these anabolics that force the body to hold mass at a rate that their system cannot keep up with. So because it takes so long for joints and tendons to thicken out, if the muscles are getting strong really fast, joints and tendons aren't, the end result is tears happen. They happen a lot more often because of it, or when people are on heavy doses. So as much as that kind of demonstrates a pitfall, it's kind of a why you shouldn't just go on a ton of gear and let the gear drive your progress indefinitely. It also illustrates kind of a limit, kind of a ceiling to how fast you can produce results even when you're on a ton of anabolics. And that's something that's worth taking into account. Even if you go on a bunch of anabolics and you say, okay, now we're going to put you through the ringer, we're going to put you through this really intense program that's high frequency, high intensity, high volume, and on and on and on. you still have to have an inherent amount of durability to be able to last through that programming. So when you're talking about, let's say, Soviet sports programs, let's say Olympic lifting, where it's state-sponsored doping, and you have this big population of disposable lifters who are pre-selected for their talent, what you're doing is you're giving all of them the enhancements and giving all of them the meat grinder of a program, and the few that don't fall apart are the world champions. That is a unique circumstance because we have the benefit of having disposable athletes to begin with. You are not a disposable athlete. You have to figure out what works well for you. And that genetic limit you have as far as how much work can you handle without just simply falling apart is going to come way before we even factor in the PEDs. So because training is really just finding a baseline of work, figuring out how to progress over time at a sustainable rate, every single one of you is on the hook, whether you're on gear or not, for finding something that is sustainable. There is not a universal geared program that is somehow different than a universal natty program. That doesn't exist. Same thing with intermediate, novice, advanced, whatever. There aren't universally advanced programs, universally intermediate programs. They're all relative to what you're used to doing, to what you can bounce back from, to what is sustainable for you. So whether you're enhanced or not, whether you're natty or not, you're still going to have to put in the same amount of effort in finding a program that is sustainable. I know myself, it doesn't matter what I'm on. I can't handle pressing twice per week. My musculature gets very strong very fast. My shoulders turn into hamburger, and I get really bad inflammation. I get really bad tendonitis, and it gets really hard to kick. Similarly, I can't deadlift more than once every other week. If I try to deadlift even on a weekly basis, the cycle doesn't matter. I simply don't recover. So understand that even when you're looking at the most ridiculous program, when you're looking at things like Smolov, when you're looking at Bulgarian style training, yes, enhancements were part of that equation, but they were based off the fact that you have a lot of disposable lifters. Enhanced or not, you still don't get that result unless you have a certain percentage of lifters who are durable enough to make it through, and that durability has nothing to do with gear. I shook Blaine Sumner's hand. Blaine Sumner looks like Shrek wearing a human suit. He has very thick wrists, very fat hands. The guy has a frame that can support the beatdown of squatting, benching, deadlifting 3 times a week, which at the time I met him a few years back is exactly what he was doing. Paul Carter wrote about touring around Australia with Klokov, and Klokov was a very successful, very famous 105K Olympic lifter. Paul said that within an hour of waking up, he was in the training hall and he had hit a 440 snatch. Within an hour of waking up, I can't walk upstairs. Klokov has very thick joints, apparently has a very pronounced forehead that stands out more in person than it does in photographs. He has very caveman-like features, and even said that one of his fingers was about twice the size of a normal person's fingers. He said it was like 2 fingers taped together. So when you see these lifters, again, very thick bones, very thick joints, no matter who you are, you have to figure out what is your capability of recovering from a certain amount of work. Do you feel better when you do one singular really hard workout and give yourself 5-6 days to recover? Or do you feel better when you do a few workouts of the same exercise with lower volume in each one, where you're kind of leaving a little in the tank and letting fatigue accrue over the course of the working week? Everybody has a completely different answer. Some people can get away with just about anything. Some people can redline it more. Some people, like me, are made of glass and we fall apart if we increase our frequency by even the slightest amount. Long story short, it doesn't matter. No matter who you are, there are still genetic variances that make you different from the person next to you, with or without gear. So you still have to apply the same type of critical thinking to figure out what is appropriate for you given your current ability to recover. Okay, so that's all I have to say about that. So if you have more questions, and I'm sure there will be, go ahead and leave it in the comment box. Go ahead and start a thread on the forum, empire-forum.com. Thanks for watching, guys. Until next time, this is Bromley at Empire Barbell. I'll see you.